Hi everyone, I'm Joey. Okay, so this is a bit of an experiment for me. This job's actually for my mum. She wanted some bedside tables to match a wardrobe I made here just not long ago. And so I wanted to try something different, mainly the way the legs work, which I'll talk about in just a second. So really, I just wanted to mention that this whole project is a bit of an experiment really, and I kind of approached it as more of a sculpture than furniture, which puts you in a bit of a different mindset and lets you kind of just play with different ideas rather than sticking to a strong, furniture making kind of ideology. Anyhow, that's probably all a bit deep for this video. Hope you enjoy. See ya. Okay, so this is my template, and this is going to be a bit of an experiment. Because what I don't like about cabriole legs, well, it's not that I don't like, it's just a feature that I've noticed, is that when this leg attaches to a carcass, you're often left with a little flat spot that hangs down past the tabletop, and traditionally they are covered up by quote-unquote ears, which are glued on and carved to have the same shape as the cabriole leg. They're a pain in the butt to make, and I don't really like the look of the ear being attached to the cabriole leg. So after making a bunch of these, I kind of thought, why can't I just include something onto the leg itself when I cut it out? And so this is kind of what I've come up with, where instead of having the square point, we're going to have this part here, which kind of nests in underneath the carcass. And after doing a bit of investigation, obviously I have not reinvented the wheel here. This has been done before, but I've never done it myself, and it was done a long time ago. So I'd really love to know how they did it. Anyway, I'm going to give this a crack. Also, the difference here is that the shape of the cabriole leg extends up to the top of what will be the top of the bedside table, whereas on like a traditional cabriole leg, the cabriole leg is formed and then it comes up to a square piece which attaches to the square carcass of the cabinet. On this one, the shape of the cabriole leg continues up the side to the top of the cabinet. So it's going to be quite a different piece where I have to actually shape the sides of the cabinet. Everything's going to be sculpted as well. So yeah. Right, so now that my template fits the blank, the problem is that it only fits the blank on an angle, kind of skewed onto the piece. And this is not ideal for making these sorts of legs, because typically you rely on the straight corner of the blank to rotate your template around. And I considered a bunch of options where I could just use the corner of the blank like this, but then I'd have to add on the little triangle that's sticking off the edge, and I didn't really want to glue on pieces because it kind of defeats the purpose of trying to do it in one piece anyway. So really I just needed a bigger blank, or I could fit the template across the angle and have to deal with cutting everything on an angle and not square to my blank, which is a bit of a pain in the butt, but it was really the only option I think I had. So by referencing the bottom of the foot against the bottom of my blank, 5mm away from each side, that gave me a constant point where I could keep putting my template, and then I could use the bevel to transfer the angle. Turns out it was about 4 degrees, so I could transfer that square angle off the template onto the other face of the blank. Then I could place my blank onto the other face of the, I could place my template on the other face of the blank and line it up according to how I had just done it previously. It seemed to work pretty good, but still time consuming. Because the leg is not square in the blank, the end cuts needed to be compound, so it was about 4 degrees compound cut for the top and the bottom of each foot. Because all the cuts needed to be compound, it kind of creates a problem when you're cutting on the bandsaw. Because it was only 4 degrees off square, it wasn't too bad, and I kind of fudged it, and you can see later on there's a little bit of gaps underneath the table, so you can't actually see the mistake here, but I could at least carry on cutting out the legs from the blanks. I've never had this happen before on such a short cut on the bandsaw, where the timber pinches the blade in only 100mm of cut. So it was a bit strange, but got it out. Now it turns out I had forgotten to make one of the shoulder cuts, so I had to try and find all the pieces I'd cut off, put it back, make the cut, and then carry on. I spent quite a bit of time here on my bobbin sander and then hand sanding on all the legs. But once that was done, I could get on to making the blanks for the aprons. The side of the aprons need to match the curve on the leg, and so I'm just using this technique where you run the board across the table saw, just taking fairly small passes, just maybe 3mm at a time. In my case, the cove I need is bigger than the radius of my saw, so I'm getting pretty close to what I need to by putting the piece through the saw from each direction. And that gets me close to where I need to be. So each leg is different, so I've had to scribe the end of each apron to each leg, and then I'm basically getting as close as I can to that line with whatever tools I have. The best tool actually turned out to be the largest round plane I've got, which is lying there on the bench. It seemed to be the most effective, and then cleaned up with a card scraper. While that was drying, I made up a quick template for the top and milled up and glued up some pieces of oak for the top. I'd also glued up some big blanks of pine for the drawer fronts. It has to be quite thick. I could use the template I'd made for the top as the template for the shape of the front from one direction. Next I had to make up a couple of drawers. Now the budget was running a bit thin here, so the drawers are minimal. Because of the thickness of the drawer front, I thought I could use some of that thickness and add a drawer pull routed into the bottom edge, which actually works quite nice. Right, time for some primer, which shows up all the imperfections, which means that I can then sand them all out again. Back on the oak tops, I can cut the front shape on the bandsaw and then clean everything else up on the router. Okay, so with these drawer fronts, spent quite a bit of time sanding after I primed and then added some filler. I can still see some imperfections, but I'm going to, every time I look at them I can see imperfections. I'm going to get some color on them now and then see how that shows up and see how much sanding back I have to do after that point. It's very hard to tell what's going to show, but yeah, interesting. Right, the early morning sun in my workshop is not so good for filming, but the show must go on, so the drawer runners go in and then can be attached to the drawers themselves. final coat of paint goes on, I'm using the roller. I was considering spraying it, but actually the temperature we had and the way the paint was flattening out was really nice, so that's how it stayed. With the drawer front fitted, I have to take all the drawer runner hardware back out so I can have access to the pocket holes to attach the top, and then put the drawers back in, and she's all done. That's it for this video. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.